We all know Dungeon Master can be a hobby, but did you know it can also be a job? There are people out there who are getting paid real money to run tabletop games. Actually, it's kind of a lot of people. So I interviewed a bunch of them. Game masters, players, and even the founder of the most popular website for finding paid games. Today, I'm gonna give you an inside look at how this whole weird little industry works, how people get into it, how much money is actually changing hands, and what it's really like to sit at one of those tables.
I think somebody was like last year or the year before, because they would talk about their income openly. He made almost $100,000 in 1 year off of Start Playing Games. And I'm not like to that point yet, but yeah, I still do some side gigs and stuff like that, but for the most part, it's just D&D.
This is BILLDOW. He told me that he currently runs 10 games a week, all paid.
So let me look exactly. Yes, 10 a week currently, and I have 2 more that are starting up soon, so it's going to be 12 a week. I am BILLDOW, professional dungeon master, William in real life. I've been a professional dungeon master for almost 10 years now, kind of just fumbled into it.
He runs online D&D campaigns that he writes himself. Even the handful of times that he's run modules, he admits that he basically rewrote them from scratch. Most of his parties are 4 to 6 players, although he said he does have one game with 8.
Insane. Don't do that. Don't have 8 players.
BILLDOW is one of the most expensive DMs I interviewed, and he's well aware of the sticker shock that some people may feel when they hear how much it costs to play at his tables.
So it's $40 a player right now, which like I have officially priced myself out of being able to play in my game.
Wow. But he didn't start off charging that much. 10 years ago, when he was first getting started, he was offering rock bottom prices, just trying to see if anybody would be willing to pay for D&D at all.
So I was on like Reddit and Tabletop Simulator in chat asking people, hey, do you want to pay $5 to play a game? And then over time it just kind of builds in and built up over time. Eventually I had to raise my prices because so many people were joining the games, and that's kind of how my price has gone over and over, where I just raise it because too many people are asking, supply and demand.
These days, BILLDOW isn't hunting for players on Reddit anymore. Now he runs games on StartPlaying.games, which is the most popular website for connecting players with GMs for paid tabletop games. He's run over 800 games through the site, and every single review that players have left for him is 5 stars. Clearly, his players feel like he's giving them $40 a session worth of value. But he's been doing this for a long time, and for a newer game master, the landscape can look a little different.
Typically, it's about $20 a session, and when that comes down to player count, material costs, time I put into planning and everything, I'm still making less than minimum wage doing that, So it is currently a side gig for me. I'd maybe love to get to the point where I can do it full time. My name is ALLIE. I like to brand myself as your friendly neighborhood game master. I am located in Denver, Colorado, and I got my start in D&D about 3.5 years ago when I showed up to my local game store for a learn to play.
All of Allie's paid GMing is in person, whether that's game store events targeted at beginners or private events like birthday or bachelor parties. She told me she typically spends about 4 hours prepping for a session, preparing things like music and handouts and even immersive props like wax-sealed letters. But when I asked if her minimum wage calculation includes prep time,
honestly, no. It's pretty much just for I am doing my prep time. Honestly feel it's my time, and I don't want to necessarily impose that on my players, because I think the expectation in pro versus regular games is like, I figure I get paid for the time I am at the table. And it was already tough enough for me to come to that like $20 to $25 in my own freelance time, because when I worked at my local game store, we only charged $10 per head for the learn to plays. I think that's probably the most difficult thing I found for pro GMing is, how do I market myself, and what am I worth in a sense? What am I willing to charge for my services?
Yeah.
But like I said, I really want to keep it accessible to as many people as possible, because as many people as possible should be playing D&D.
I interviewed 6 different professional game masters for this video, and no 2 of them priced their games the same way. But ALLIE is probably the closest to what you'd call an average rate of pay.
Oh yeah, $18 to $20. My name is Devon. I am the co-founder and CEO of StartPLAYING, the largest site for finding games groups and game masters.
After hearing everything from $4 to $50 a session during these interviews, I was excited to get some actual data from Devon, who probably has more visibility into the paid game master scene than anyone else.
What's interesting is, like, the top line, we see people listing games for like $30 to $40, and we see people listing games for $5, but because new people come in and they usually kind of start at a lower amount and then they kind of go up over time, you always have new people coming in, and so that's why like the prices kind of stayed the same in the $18 to $20 range. When we first started, it was more like in the $15 to $18 range. So it has gone up a little bit.
One of the biggest things that I wanted to know was not just how many DMs were getting paid, but how many were getting paid enough to make it more than a side hustle.
I think around 15 to 25% are full-time.
Wow, that's way higher than I thought it would be.
Yeah, same. And it's really hard, but it's like I can't give too much of our proprietary numbers, but it's like looking at the average amount of earnings based off of like what is considered, in kind of like a certain salary range of different locations. Obviously, it's a lot harder to make it a full-time gig in San Francisco.
Yeah.
But if you live, somewhere else in the country where the cost of living is a little bit lower, you could actually do this full-time and make an okay living.
And this is not just a handful of game masters getting these bookings. According to Devon, there are thousands of game masters landing paid games.
So it changes every month, but it's anywhere from like 2,500 to 5,000 GMs are running games every month.
Wow.
And we've helped over like 80,000 players find their party.
But if you're hearing all this with dollar signs in your eyes, don't get too excited just yet. For every game master who is successfully selling those $18 to $20 a head seats, there are game masters with empty tables and empty pockets.
Oh, there's always people who list games that don't get them filled. If you do get bookings, it's usually within 21 days of joining. So we have some data that like if you join Start Playing and you end up actually running a paid game, it's around 21 days is when that first paid game happens.
Okay, we have been talking about the GMs who are getting paid, but we haven't really talked about who's paying them. Who are these people dropping 20 bucks a session on a D&D game, and why do they do it?
I've played every week since January. I think I've missed 2 sessions, but I played every week since January, and I've gotten to like play a person for 8 months through like several levels nonstop, which I don't even think I can say that of the 30 years that I've been playing. Like, I just don't think that gets to happen. My name is Nicole Winters, and I live in Washington State. I did just start pay to play at the beginning of this year. I'm a therapist, and so I practice psychotherapy in the state of California, and then I'm also kind of coach. I do dynamic work with neurospicy people is what I'm calling it at this point.
Nicole was telling me that early in her career, she did a lot of work in trauma therapy and in recovery. This was in the wake of COVID, when loneliness was a more pressing problem than ever, for everyone really, but especially for those in crisis. During that time, she got to take a training on therapeutically applied tabletop role-playing games, and the idea stuck with her.
The thought of trying to therapeutically mix role-playing games and therapy and community, like all this stuff that I already know comes with D&D, I cannot get it out of my mind. I will somehow figure out how to sucker people into paying me to mix those two things.
That was actually why Nicole sought out a paid game in the first place. She was looking for a dungeon master to consult as she explored how tabletop games might factor into her work. That was how she found BILLDOW.
I found BILLDOW kind of in like that search, because I have only ever been a player, and so I think that what I've realized is that if I were to do something, I would probably be like a player / therapist in a game and have someone who facilitates the gaming part as like a co-facilitator of it, but it would be like a therapy group, right? And so to have someone who will sit there and talk to you about the madness mechanic for an hour is really, really wonderful, right?
But even though Nicole connected with BILLDOW for consultation, she doesn't just play in his game for the information. She also just has a great time.
I'm a happy person who lives a pretty good life, and Wednesdays from 12 to 4 are still like solidly the best part of my week. Almost every week.
Even though Nicole has been playing D&D for decades, there's something special about this game that keeps her coming back, despite the expense.
A lot of things make it appealing, and definitely the consistency is number one, right? Because it is always managing breakups and herding cats, trying to keep games together. At least in the games that I have gotten to play in, like, people just don't, like, it is a priority. It's something that they've scheduled because they've also probably had to schedule into their budget, you know, and so it's like become a deal. I feel like that is a treasure in the game world.
I heard this over and over from almost all the people I interviewed. When people are paying for D&D, they just tend to be more committed.
I definitely see that more commitment when there is that paid expectation there.
I don't know what it is, but when you're paying for it, immediately your brain says like, oh, I have to pay attention and take care of this.
And let's be honest, if people don't have money put down for something, they are so flaky and bad about scheduling stuff.
I feel like when you have that incentive, you are much less likely to mess around and be more engaged in the game and at the table with the characters.
People take scheduling much more seriously when everyone is paying.
Players that pay to play, they are there to play. I see much less disengagement, like fiddling on phones when it's not their turn. There's not a lot of dawdling or distraction.
Nicole listed some other perks of a paid game too. She gets access to all the digital tools that BILLDOW pays for, like books on D&D Beyond, VTTs and digital token makers, maps and music, just tons of features that a home game GM doesn't necessarily invest in.
I try to own everything on D&D Beyond because that's what I use, which is holy goodness, they are getting very expensive. Not like expensive, but they just added so much third-party stuff, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
But not just that, but I do pay for a couple of Patreons, like Czepeku.
Yeah.
Great patron, so worth it. So worth it. And I don't even use 2D maps like that.
Love their maps. I wish they were my sponsor. If they were my sponsor for this episode, I'd be like, go on for 60 seconds. It's true that Czepeku did not sponsor this video, but you know what they did sponsor? Our Legend Society live play game at Gen Con this year. We got to use their illustrated animated scenes to put ourselves right into the fantasy.
We're gonna have so much fun.
Okay.
Aren't we, Auntie?
To the picture you took, there's a disapproving face, like hovering around, just behind Beatrix. You seem acquainted?
Yeah. We met while we were getting some delicious treats in the lounge. Why is she so mad at me already?
She's just like that.
I'm just like this. But it is a pleasure to meet you. You said...
Babs a Barbarian, hashtag Babs, hashtag Barbarian.
I'm not familiar with nearly all of those titles, but
That's all right.
I will become acquainted.
You can just call me Beb.
Demetria Filfano Floronos. So how's Floronos?
Her accent is so sexy. It's almost as sexy as my husband Rargs.
So you are married?
Oh, yeah. And don't just wear this rock for nothing.
Well, Beatrix isn't that funny. Oh, she might be a good influence on you.
Everyone feels the unseen servants looking away.
Big thanks to Czepeku for sponsoring the game and helping us fill up that big ol' stage with some beautiful immersive scenery. If you want their maps or scenes or tokens to use in your own games, I'll put a link in the description. Anyway, back to Nicole. She said that because BILLDOW runs so many games, he has a big community, which means he can put together a group with players that all want similar things, making for a really cohesive table. And of course, his professionalism extends to safety tools and Session Zero, which are really important to Nicole.
Especially for new folks, like I just think that's such a cool option to not have to go through all the grisliness of all of the wrong games. Much like therapy, bad D&D can be worse than no D&D.
At this point, I felt like I could intuit the answer, but just to make sure, I asked Nicole if she thought paying for D&D was worth it.
In my opinion, most definitely. And again, I just want to preface that with saying that I hit pay dirt with the game that I play in, and on the first try got a wonderful professional GM to make that experience be worth it from the first moment. So I do think it's worth it.
That's very warm and fuzzy, but rationally we know that not every professional GM is going to be as amazing as BILLDOW apparently is. So what happens to the players who don't hit pay dirt?
It was awful. It was really bad. It was probably one of, if not the worst, D&D experiences of my life. I'm Poignard, also known as Antonio D'Amico, also known as your best friend in the world. And I have a channel on YouTube, but you already know that.
When I told Antonio that I was working on this video, he launched into this story, and I was immediately like, stop right there, we should continue this conversation on camera. This happened 6 or 7 years ago. It was a friend's birthday, and to celebrate, his D&D group wanted to play a game where none of them had to DM. They all got to be players together.
I believe we went through Roll20, because people do advertise their services there. If not, it was either that or like the looking for group subreddit. I believe that he said something along the lines of like, I've been running D&D since like the first edition in the 70s, and we had not done that. So we was like, oh, that's a fun experience to have as a DM, like a really old school guy that has seen all editions.
I asked him how much he paid, and he said he didn't have a super clear memory, but he thought it was probably around $40 a person, or $200 total.
It's like a concert, like not like a massive concert, but like a good sized concert. If you wanted to go see, I don't know, Mumford & Sons, why would you? But like if you wanted to, it would be around that.
Listen, I'm a millennial. Of course I'd want to go see Mumford & Sons.
I have gone to see Mumford & Sons.
What made it so bad?
We said, we volunteer this information, by the way. It's not like he asked, but we said, hi, we're like a roleplay heavy group. We like role-playing, we like playing pretend, but we also like combat. We would like an ideally a mix of both. We're looking for one session. He said, sounds good, and proceeded to do nothing related to that. no roleplay, like prompts, no NPCs to bounce off of. He insisted on Roll20. We didn't play Roll20 at the time, but he insisted on Roll20. He had no token images, so all the monsters look like the MSN logo, like a new person joining Twitter logo. And then we paid like good money for this. Every single time we approached an NPC to start an interaction, and we got no character voice, no characterization, and like a lot of like reported speech, he says that you have to do this, which to me is like great. Like I don't even get to see, like, to hear what he says. We started the final fight. By the way, because there was no role playing, this is not like a group that was dilly-dallying. Like we weren't like going off the beaten path. We were following pretty, like, as close as we could the adventure structure, even though it was super clear that he hadn't thought about what we were gonna do this session. We got into what passed itself off as a boss encounter, did 2 rounds of combat, and that's when the timer went off. Once again, this was not us like going around and wasting time. It's just he didn't do a tight enough one shot, so the timer ran and he was like, I guess that's it for today, and then that's it. Like, he never finished that session. That one shot was not a one shot. The one shot was not finished. That was it. He just like bailed. He finished this by telling us that we should talk about it on social media and tag him.
That is wild. And before anybody starts turning this into a war of additions, Antonio was very clear that the DM being old school was not the problem.
No, that wasn't it. No, I played really old school D&D. It wasn't like that. Like, I know it wasn't like that. If I had to rank like D&D that I enjoy, I would say like really early D&D and really new D&D, I greatly appreciate. Much love. When I play with dinosaurs, I love the game. And the vibes are perfect.
I know that sounds like a horror story, but believe it or not, Antonio was not turned off of paid games forever. His group actually tried again and booked a second game master.
The new DM was fantastic. We provided the same information and she immediately came back with questions of her own. Like, one of the things she said is like, what kind of like themes do you guys like? Do you want something like funny? Do you want something like scary? Do you want something adventurous? She asked a great question, which was like, what are your favorite stories? She came out with it with an adventure exactly like that. It felt like it was an adventure for us.
For Antonio, the biggest green flag about this second game master was that she asked questions. She wanted to figure out what kind of game he and his friends wanted so that she could try and deliver it. That was his biggest tip for avoiding his terrible first pay-to-play experience. Look for the game masters that ask questions. But that's definitely not the only way to vet a paid game master, and you should be vetting them, because unfortunately, anybody can call themselves a pro GM, and you won't realize which ones were underqualified until they've already taken your money and you've already played an awful game.
I've seen DMs that just try to throw everything together and don't really have that quality that people are looking for, and it feels more like a home game. The bar is so low for quality because some people just don't care. That sucks to say it like that, but like, when you've had bad D&D, you know it.
One good way to weed out underperforming or just unproven game masters is to read reviews.
You can like see what people have said about this GM. You can also see like that player has played in 200 sessions with that game master because it's, you know, it's been verified by knowing that a payment went through and things like that. That helps you kind of really figure out if like the play style is right for you.
But even if you're finding a game master through another avenue where you don't have reviews or ratings to go off of, it's important to get an idea of their style, their experience, and just whether or not they're your vibe.
That's why we tell GMs like, hey, really make sure that it's so clear who you are. Don't try to catch every fish in the sea. Be really specific, because people will see that and the right people will join your game.
So it's time for the $1 million question, or rather the $18 to $20 a head question. Could you, dear viewer, get paid to run tabletop games?
Go and pay for a game on the site or wherever and see where the bar is, you know, because if it's quality enough when you're like, oh, I couldn't do this, then like, that's great, you know now.
I loved this tip from BILLDOW because one of the questions I got over and over again when I asked you guys what you wanted to know about paid GMing was, how do I know if I'm good enough? How much experience do I need? And if we learned anything from Antonio's story, it's that years of experience does not directly correlate to quality of work.
I was blinded by like the confidence. I mean, of like, I've been running D&D for 152 years. I was like, I've only been running D&D for 100 years. This guy's gonna be amazing.
The game masters I interviewed for this video, all of whom are successfully getting paid to run games, had wildly different amounts of experience when they first started charging. I interviewed a game master who had only been GMing for 9 months when they started running paid games, and another who had more than 40 years under their belt. There is no, you must be this tall to ride bar to meet. There is no objective number. Unfortunately, it's a little more qualitative quantitative than that.
If you're gonna pay for something, it's gotta be this good or this good. It can't just be like a whatever person doing it in their spare time. It's gotta be somebody who's got a real passion for it and is gonna throw themselves into it, which is why I decided to do this for work. I fell into this doing it because I already give 150% when I'm GMing. Hi, my name is Nico DeGaio. I am a professional actor, voice actor, and burlesque performer and burlesque host.
Nico was not the only game master I spoke to who talked about this idea that some types of game masters may just be better suited to running paid games. There are certain skill sets and even certain personality traits that make this kind of work easier.
You know, if you enjoy GMing and it's a hobby and it's just the hobby for you, then that's all it has to be. But if you are really trying to make money doing that because you would like to do that instead of something else, then it has to be something that they're gonna expect more from you than other GMs, you know? If you don't like catering to your players, if you don't like constantly communicating with your players, or you don't naturally do that already, or it's one of those things where talking to people pushes you outside of your comfort zone, or I did a marketing thing with some other paid GMs, and it turns out they all hate putting themselves out there on social media, which is how everyone finds me in the first place.
Yeah.
Then you're gonna be forcing yourself to be somebody you're not, to succeed at something that it's not that you're not cut out for or good enough for, it's just not your thing, and not every fun thing you do has to be the thing you make money off of.
This is something I already have a lot of thoughts on because it bleeds into every creative hobby. We live in a world now where if somebody shares some cool creation, the comments are full of things like, where can I buy this? And you should start an Etsy shop. But as a person who did turn my creative hobbies into a job, let me be the first to say that it is okay and actually extremely healthy to have creative pursuits that are not monetized. I asked all these game masters if GMing for pay changed their enjoyment of the game, and pretty much everybody said the same thing. It's just different. It's fun compared to other jobs, but it's more work and more pressure than it was when it was just a hobby. Running home games and running paid games just aren't the same thing.
It sounds like what you're saying is that you need kind of a lot of like social and emotional intelligence as a paid DM, maybe even more so than in a game with your friends.
For sure. You can't have a session 0 when it's a one-shot, especially not with strangers at a con. Like, you're just showing up and you're kind of hoping everyone's gonna be chill. So you do have to be a little bit more like, your mind is like 3/4 on the game and the mechanics and stuff, and you're also kind of 1/4 on like, how's everyone feeling? Just vibe checking everyone and making sure you're really making eye contact with everyone. Hello, I am Matthew Best. I am a tabletop role-playing game designer, so I like actually write there are some books behind me that I've written, and that's super fun.
So basically for you, paid GMing is a supplement to your full-time job as a game designer and a writer of games.
Exactly.
Matt talked about experiences at paid tables dealing with everything from main character syndrome to unapproved homebrew to engaging quiet players. To hear him tell it, the actual game mastering might even be the easiest part of pay to play. The muscle that paid GMs really need to strengthen is their social ability.
And what I'll say is that if those aren't things that are already in your toolbox that are really strong, make everything else that's already in your toolbox so strong that you get to practice those live. So what I would mean by that is, don't run an adventure you've never run before.
Right.
Run one that you know backwards and forwards. Remove all of the other variables so that really you're kind of brain off on like the actual GMing part, and you're just doing the interpersonal part, the social awareness part. Whatever you need to focus on that's your weakness, have everything else secured away to the point that you can practice that live, and that's gonna make your job easier.
If all that hasn't scared you off, you're probably wondering where to start.
We do a few things. One, we have like this onboarding, which we offer all new GMs. Like, hey, if you're brand new to the site, come. And it's usually someone on the staff or one of our like longtime GMs that's like, hey, here's how the tools work. Here's some basic insights. Here's some best practices. A lot of stuff that really helps you get from 0 to 1 very quickly. We have so many GMs who've been doing this for a long time. GMs who've already run 1,000 games on the platform, or have 80 players that they run games for. They have high retention. We thought it'd be great if we can put like some money back into that side of the community and for them to teach GMs what they've learned. And so we'll pay them to run a seminar that all the GMs can join for free and learn from that GM about things that have worked for them.
It's probably starting to sound like Start Playing is paying me under the table or something. So just to be clear, all this training that they offer, it's free. And considering that most of us have to figure out our freelance creative careers on our own, I cannot overstate what a great opportunity that is. Even if you don't plan to run games on Start Playing, you should absolutely take advantage of their resources. I mean, if anybody's getting paid under the table here, it's Devon.
What advice would you give give an aspiring pro GM?
Watch Ginny D. She makes great videos. They make you a better GM.
Yes, exactly. Your check is in the mail.
Now, we've been talking about D&D a lot because obviously it's the most popular tabletop game, but actually you can get paid to run all kinds of different games.
Yeah, so what's interesting is 5e is definitely the most popular system online, what people are playing at home by a huge margin. But what we do notice is people like to play with GMs that they love. And so if you are a great GM and you have players with you, the likelihood that those players also try a different system, if you're offering a different system, is really high. So it is true that like D&D is a gateway.
This is wild, actually. It sounds like once players find a game master they like, they are ride or die.
The retention that we have is something like 70-75%.
Wow.
Most people will only book with one GM and they'll stay with them for like 14 plus months.
So this means if you can deliver a great game, players will come back again and again, even if you switch systems.
I've gone to a couple of like start playing like seminars at previous Gen Cons, and all of the top GMs on that platform will absolutely tell you it does not matter if you use Roll20 or Foundry. It does not matter if you play 5e or First Edition. It does not matter if you're Pathfinder or Cyborg. Play what you're excited about and what you're good at running, and use the tools that you're good at using, and people will come to you.
Matt used to run a lot of D&D games at conventions, which is the main setting where he does paid games. But these days, he's exclusively running systems that he designs for.
So a lot of Morkborg, well, technically not Morkborg, but the Morkborg families, like Cyborg. We're making a new space game called Morksoul, and then I have a tarot deck builder game called Beckoning Dream. Those are the ones that we've been doing the most of our playtesting with. If I want to play 5e, I have a glut of options. If I want to play Fabula Ultima or Cyborg or something else, there might only be 10, 12 games at any time listed on Start Playing or Roll20, which means I'm gonna be way more competitive over those seats, and those GMs can probably charge more.
This was so fascinating to me because as a content creator, I am rewarded for the quantity of my audience, not really the quality. When somebody who loves D&D watches my video, it pays the exact same as somebody who thinks it's fine. But when selling 6 seats at a game table, it doesn't matter if there are 10 people who want to play or 1,000 people who want to play. Either way, you only need 6. Now, whether this is happening at a convention or a game store or online or at somebody's bachelor party, we've been talking about a very particular type of paid game this whole time. A game where the players pay the game master. But that is not the only way. For example, sometimes it's the players' parents who are paying.
Okay, so my name is Seth. I am currently the owner of the Deliberate Myth gaming services. I got my daughters into it when they were younger, started playing with them, and they had a great time with it. I started running some games for some of their friends. I'm the only one who does it full-time, but I've got anywhere from like 3 to 4 other game master friends that help out and run sessions when I can't. We do an after-school program, we do the private stuff, we do birthday parties and, summer camps when school's out of session.
Seth runs 4 to 7 games a week, depending on the week, and most of those are after-school programs for kids. He spends the morning reviewing his recording of the previous session and prepping for the game. And then in the afternoon, he's off to run the game at a public venue in the afternoon.
That is a selling point, I find, that I actually get to tell parents, hey, this is something that happens where the kids don't need to be on the screens, and in fact,
it's not screen time.
we encourage them not to. Like, I have a no phones at the table rule, like obviously if there are exceptions because emergencies and whatnot, but all that stuff aside, like I emphasize that this is an analog experience, which I think appeals to a lot of parents. Certainly it is on some level glorified babysitting, and I am totally comfortable with that. I have no problem with that.
In some ways, Seth is really doing 2 jobs. One is game mastering and one is childcare. And that combination of tabletop plus some other job isn't as unusual as you might think.
So a few years ago, I was doing paid GMing that was funded by the government. And that was really cool. I'm Val, and I've been, for the past couple of years, doing YouTube on a channel called Cold Boards and Curiosities, where I talk about TTRPG.
If you couldn't tell from Val's delightful accent, she is from France. A few years back, she had just gotten out of college and was looking for a job through a government program that connects young people with short-term contract work to help them enter the workforce. She just so happened to stumble on a listing for the perfect job.
Yeah, so we have a word for it. We call them ludothèques. I didn't know it was a thing either until I worked in one, and that was great. But it's like board game libraries, and sometimes they also have some video games. The one where I was working, they were starting TTRPG. It's just like a place you go to, just like you would go to a public library, and they have events, and like you can just like play right there.
If you're not jealous yet, this next bit should probably do it. Val wasn't just getting paid to run games.
I cannot tell you how much time I was spending on prep because the beauty of it is I was signed up for like 24 hours a week at the game library. And I had a few things they were asking me to do. Yeah, like we have some like games we want to like wrap in plastic to like protect them and stuff. And like occasionally I would do stuff like that. But most often it was like, I'm here 24 hours a week. I have a few games planned, but like beyond those games, all of that time I just have free to prep games, to like work on other projects. Since I had the time anyway, I would take advantage of that to also like learn to run other games, read through new source books.
But even though Val was technically getting paid to run tabletop games, she still doesn't really think of the work that she did at the games library as being paid GMing.
When I first like thought about like paid GMing, like the kind of thing I was doing just does not come to mind at all. Like, the primary thing would be like running workshops in social cultural centers and like etc. And then like the vehicle that I'm using for that is TTRPG.
A lot of the questions I had prepared to ask other paid game masters just didn't really apply to the kind of work Val was doing. For example, when I asked her what she would hope for from a player at one of those tables, she more or less rejected the question. She told me that she had to be prepared to run games for at-risk teens, people with disabilities, children. She didn't get to choose her players, and that was kind of the point.
But also, you have to be aware that these kinds of workshops and these kind of sessions, their goal is not to just like have fun running games with people who are already great players, but rather to just like use the game as a vehicle to teaching some of these social skills or getting some practice in there. There's so much to TTRPG. I think it's such a healthy hobby. At least it can be, if there's like some avenues of sharing that to more people and of using it in a community dimension, like with community centers, like funded by town halls and libraries. That's absolutely amazing.
Okay, we get it. Val is an angel and a saint and no one can criticize her. I'm serious, don't criticize her, or you're gonna find out why I always carry a sword. But what about those game masters who aren't running culturally significant community games or helping children develop their problem solving and simple math skills after school? What about the BILLDOWs and ALLIEs and NICOs and Matts of the world running games just to pad their own pockets? Is that okay? Should people be charging for D&D games? Because some of you guys were pretty riled up in my comments about the very existence of paid GMs. When I asked my interviewees what they thought about that, they responded with, well, to be honest, they responded with a lot of similes.
I don't get angry at a chef, even though I can make food at home.
When you go to a park, do you only ever go to like a public park that's for free and you just go there, or do sometimes you go to theme parks?
The example that I always think of is a personal trainer.
It's just like a crocheter who goes from making gifts to their friends to selling online on Etsy.
You need food to live, and yet nobody trips out because somebody decides to open up a restaurant because they're good at cooking.
These are all great examples because they're all jobs that exist because people will always pay for quality and convenience. I have walked right past free hotel lobby brewed coffee to go across the street and order a latte. And while I can proudly say I have never paid to have coffee delivered to me, I have ordered cookies. Delivery cookies. I know, I'm disgusting. It was just one time. The point is, just because there are restaurants doesn't mean you can no longer cook at home. And a lot of chefs still cook for their families and friends. Just like most of the game masters I interviewed still run home games for free. But no matter how you feel about it, paid game masters exist, and they're not going anywhere. So the question of should they exist is kind of moot. A better question would be, should you pay for a game master? And I want to take this opportunity to say that paying for a game master should be nowhere near as shameful as paying for cookie delivery.
I walk into a convention and I see a sea of people who are all there for the same thing and they're just like all jazzed up. And, you know, I know it's true of myself and I know it's true of probably a vast majority of the people there. Like, this hobby has saved my life on numerous occasions. It has been a thing when things are hard that I can throw myself into. As a therapist, I would say sit down with me for an hour and let's see what you're spending money on. And if some of it is less healthy than D&D, let's spend it on D&D instead. With absolutely no judgment to unhealthy coping skills, they get us through.
Thanks, Nicole. You're right, the cookies did get me through. When I asked Devon about the pushback, he said that he thinks some of it comes from an anti-capitalist angle. Like, here's this beautiful free hobby, and you're trying to paywall it.
And I get that. Like, I would love to have like a Star Trek future where it's post-scarcity and we're just exploring all of our dreams. We're doing science for the sake of science and art for the sake of art. But at the end of the day, like, we have to pay rent. Groceries cost money. And if you can find joy in your labor, why not? Why wouldn't you? And the thing is, there are no billionaires here, right? It's just creatives trying to make a living.
I think when you hold up this boogeyman of paid GMing as a concept, it's easy to lose sight of this part. Every paid game master is a person from this community that we share with their own story. ALLIE was introduced to D&D through a paid learn-to-play event at a game store, and it changed her life so fully that she decided to become that catalyst for other people. Matt isn't just running paid games, he's writing and designing the games that so many of us play. Seth introduced his own daughters to the game and realized that not every kid is lucky enough to have a D&D playing dad.
I think that does come from partly because this is such a relatively new job. Like, this is now an actual job that people get to claim, and
yeah, it's pretty wild.
That was not the case 10 years ago, 15. Like, there's not, you know.
My grandfather and his grandfather before him, professional dungeon masters.
How do I do this? Let me follow in my grandfather's footsteps. Like, you can't. That's not happening. So I think part of it is that it's new.
There's one thing that I probably have more visibility into than most, and that is just how many people are desperate to find gaming groups and just can't. I get comments all the time from people saying, I cannot find a group, or all my groups fall apart, or nobody wants to play the game I want to play. I guess it's never gonna happen for me. And even if you, dear viewer, do not want to pay for a tabletop game, there are people out there where a paid game might be the only way they get to play.
Everyone wants that magic that is the D&D group, the gaming group, like the game night group. I think that's why campaigns are so popular. I would say like 70 to 80% of daily bookings are for campaigns, and 20 or 30 is for one-shots. I mean, the stories I've heard, these 4 guys, they had never met each other. They all joined this campaign individually. They became best friends. They're getting matching tattoos. They're like going to travel and see each other. Like, the friendships made around a gaming table are some of the best friendships you could ever make. I think that's why like campaigns are so popular, is people are hungry for that connection.
It's magic every time. I do really feel like the game that I play in with BILLDOW on Wednesdays it's a very special group, but I don't think that it's, magic that's not possible just for anybody. It really is just, if you love the game, you can find that.
If you want to learn more about or even hire any of these game masters, I have a full credits list in the description with everybody's links. A huge thank you to everyone who spoke to me for this video. Also, I have about 10 hours of interview footage, and so much good stuff ended up on the cutting room floor, especially about how exactly to become a paid game master and what the logistics of that work look like. So if you want to hear advice on how to price yourself, how to market yourself, how to balance your own desires for a game with your players, let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear a story about my very first time DMing for pay, which was a complete disaster, make sure to check out this video about the time that I ran a $5,000 D&D game and had my first panic attack in a historic English castle. Obviously it sucked, but couldn't have asked for a more interesting setting.